Let's now get to the 24-hour economy. And quoting the former president, he says, if you're hearing about the 24-hour economic initiative for the first time or pretending that you do not know what it is about, please cork your ears and listen. So it goes on and on. But he says, for example, a 24-hour economy will enable one job to be shared across 3 shifts and employ 3 persons, providing job opportunities for 3 workers instead of 1. This policy, which aims to drive economic growth, improve service delivery, and create jobs in both the public and private sectors, will prioritize the needs of our youth. For the policy to thrive, the government will invest in security and public safety measures, including recruiting additional personnel and enhancing street lighting to promote night economic activity. And then he goes on to talk about the public sector's 24-hour services, 24-hour ports and harbor services, 24-hour customs services, DVLA services, passport services, 24-hour manufacturing, 24-hour construction, 24-hour sanitation and waste management, 24-hour retail and tourism services. For you, listening to the former president touch on all of these, what were your chief takeaways, Professor Mensah?
Yeah, what it tells me is that we're looking at adding on to the current existing economic structure. I mean, if you look at an economy that is operating 8 to 12 hours and you're recording a GDP of around 800 and something billion Ghana cedis, then, having an extended, hours going into 24 hours, then it tells me that you can add on to the GDP that we have. The economic output is going to increase because if you look at the night, you may not get all sectors of the economy running 24 hours. But even if we roll out that and then we look at adding a quarter of the current economic output, it should go a long way to increase the growth in our economy. And then also looking at the employment aspect, clearly we are struggling, and the youth these days, the target that they're looking out for is employment. Nothing short of that. And from where I sit, if you are going to have existing structures that can operate, 24 hours and then add on, more jobs, obviously that would be something that I will go all out for. And then also we should be able to appreciate, the current economic situation we find ourselves in. Ghana, we've been borrowing over the past years. And this, borrowed funds has gone into infrastructural development and other things. We cannot continue to operate these infrastructures, that we borrowed for instance, Rich Hospital. We cannot continue to operate it for only 8 to 12 hours.
Right.
We may be underutilizing the facility. And so if we have borrowed for some time and then we've used those monies for infrastructural development, why don't we, change our policy orientation so that we can, optimally utilize these facilities to create jobs and then also, to improve on economic output of the country. So from where I sit, my initial impression when you talk about 24-hour economy, I would say that, yes, it's a policy that I will support, 24 hours, in a day, because it is a policy that I know it will add on to our economy. But then also, we need to appreciate that it's not an economy that I'm expecting, it's not, a policy that I'm expecting the government to own all by itself.
Right.
It should be a policy that will go hand in hand with the private sector. But then, before the private sector comes in, you may have to look at the macroeconomic environment. How is the interest rate, lending rate will be faring on the market. And then also, the ease of doing business, getting business registered and all those. Because if, the government is providing the enabling environment for the private sector, to thrive, we know the private sector employs largest chunk of our workforce. So it shouldn't be a policy that will be owned by government like that. Some experience we've had over the past years where government rolls out policy and it get confused. It doesn't even know whether the policy is owned by government or they're robbing in the private man. And if the private man is coming in, what's the stake of the private man in the business and what's the stake of the government in the business? So these are things we may have to look at. But for me, where I sit, I think, it's a policy that will help the economy.
All right. Hold for me, Prof. I'll come back to you about a few more points. But when I come back to you, I want you to tell me whether the plan, this 24-hour economy, you say you're in support of it, but is it fairly feasible, very feasible? What will it take to make the execution watertight? I'll come back to you on that. But Dr. Apak, I know you have to move on. Final thoughts from you on the 24-hour economy. Just about a minute, if you can manage it.
I agree with Prof. And I think that many Ghanaians, including recognized institutions like the TUC, NUCS, GRASAC, and indeed the chiefs of my constituency, Bulsa South, when His Excellency engaged them as part of his campaign tour of Bulsa South, they pledged support and indeed accepted that the 24-hour economy was something that, if implemented, and we believe it will be done, will change the dynamics of this country's fortunes. So, the 24-hour economy, as we say, is the game changer. And we expect to execute it to the satisfaction of Ghanaians.
Dr. Clement Apak, we are grateful for your time, for joining the conversation this morning. He, of course, is the Deputy Ranking Member on the Education Committee of Parliament. We also had Dr. Peter Anti, who is with the Institute for Education Studies. But we focus now the rest of the conversation on Professor Lord Mensah. So coming back to you, Prof, is it mildly feasible? Is it very feasible? And what would it take to execute this to the letter?
Right. So when you talk about feasibility, we may have to be careful how we're going to interpret that, because we can say that a policy is feasible when it has achieved 100%, capacity. But then let's look at it this way. There are some key infrastructure, existing infrastructures that we are underutilized. If government is able to, identify all these structures, and then quickly we turn out to say that we're going to increase, the employment in these structures, and as a result of that, we want them to operate 24 hours. That is an initial point. So you can say
So on paper, it is feasible.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. It is feasible. It is feasible. We already have the structures. Some of them are being, when you talk about Temahabo, for instance, they are operating, but then, they by 6 o'clock, they've closed. And you ask yourself, if you have, a vessel coming to dock after 6 o'clock, it means it has to wait for the next day before, they start operating on it. But then if you have, a policy of that sort, and government goes, all out to say, workers at the port should be able to work, 24 hours. I think we should get, vessels being cleared and all those. And then also, because we're going to have, 24-hour services. Most of the activities that we're supposed to rush out to do them in the day, which normally causes congestions and, traffic, on our roads, possibly may be extended in the night. And one way or the other, in itself, that easing of economic activities during the day, and some of them being moved to the night, one way or the other is more or less, a benefit to the country. And so, from where I sit, it is feasible on paper, depending on how you are going to measure your feasibility. Because if you are saying that you should achieve 100%, target, I don't think we'll say it is feasible for now. But if government is able to operate, government is able to identify key hubs, right, within the economy, that within the next 1 to 2 years, we can tend to, operate fully 24 hours, I mean, I would say it is feasible.
What sectors? The former president has enumerated which sectors he would be going for. We've already talked about some of them, the DVLA, the Ports and Harbors Authority, among others. Which sectors, from where you sit, should be targeted at the very initial stages of this? If we want to target the most productive sectors or the most viable sectors, which would they be for you, Prof?
Well, I will first look at the health sector. And then we should also look at the security, because if someone wants to operate, his business out there, he wants to be protected. And so if, government should look at a sector that basically from the beginning of the policy, it should be the security sector, right? And then, the security sector is going to be kind of the base that the government will provide. It's going to be the kind of structure that the government must invest in, to achieve this 24-hour economy, because those who are working in the night may want to be protected. Another thing that, sector that we may have to look at is possibly the services sector, which we're talking about, the DVLA services, the passport services and all those. You see, the passport service in itself, I always say that the traffic during the day are so huge, and as a result of that, people put in their the passport, and it takes them so long to get their passport. But if you want to run 24-hour economy, obviously you should improve on the turnaround of passport applications and the receiving of the passport. So there are some sectors that and then agro-processing.
Right.
Agro-processing, government may look at it, carefully. But like I said, it shouldn't be a standalone policy. It should be a policy, that will go hand in hand with the macroeconomic environment, so that the private man can also come in. Because when you talk about agro-processing, most of them are being handled by the private sector. And so if interest rates, are down,
right,
and we've seen the trends, as we look at the macroeconomic number. If interest rates are down and the private man can borrow easily, they should be able to expand on their agro-processing businesses and, one way or the other, build up into this 24-hour economy. So
right,
we shouldn't treat it as a standalone policy when you ask of the feasibility, but rather we should look at it holistically, how it fits into, the current economic, structure that we have.
Thank you, Prof, for joining the conversation. Thank you for the insight you've shared. Professor Lord Mensah, of course, is with the University of Ghana Business School. We're grateful for your time.